Before we start talking about the multimedia principle, let's first review the cognitive theories, which is the basis of all the multimedia principles that we'll be studying. Learners are the consumers of information. Educators are the deliverers of information to a passive learner. What we now know from research on how the brain works, especially working memory, is that this information delivery model is not the most efficient way that we learn. Cognitive theory trumps information delivery theory. We have two methods for receiving information for learning as it has to do with online instruction: sight and sound. The key point to understand is that we are limited by a very short attention span that we can retain this information. According to Clark, we take it through sight and sound. Obviously, we use all of our senses, but sight and sound are the ones we have most control of for our multimedia presentations, at least for now. So we take in information in the form of sight into a visual spatial sketchpad, which is held in working memory a very brief time. It is analyzed, sorted, and assigned to long-term memory. Audio comes through our ears and goes through the same process in a phonological loop. Remember our chart that diagrams the cognitive theory of multimedia learning? It shows how the brain takes in and processes sight and sound simultaneously in working memory. The two parts of working memory are called the phonological loop and the visual spatial sketchpad. Let's take a further look. We take in information in the form of sight into the visual spatial sketchpad, which is held in working memory a very brief time. It is analyzed, sorted, and assigned to long-term memory. Audio comes through our ears and goes through the same process in a phonological loop. We have a central executive that selects what to focus on. This is why learner-centered emphasis is so important. As a human, we are subject through our biological makeup to receive information in this manner. We have no control of this. It is built into our DNA. So we learn best when we are actively engaged with sight and sound. The central executive is constantly monitoring these channels, making selections of what to focus on. Active learners have to build systems in order to relate ideas to ideas. This is where the episodic buffer comes into play. This is the integrating part of our model. It was researched after the original research by Clark, Mayer, and others, but makes sense as an extension of these theories. Stories in the form of narrative give context to knowledge construction. This episodic buffer allows us to develop new schema because we can relate new information with pre-existing knowledge. The science of instruction is where the various principles of multimedia learning discussed in our textbook are useful. They give us a methodology of designing our learning. They are rooted in cognitive theory that we have discussed and that you have read about. These principles make relevant the cognitive theory and use the understanding of brain theory to our benefit as we develop learning, especially online learning. As we study and put into practice these theories, you will see that they reject the information theory that we are so used to in our learning. There will be a number of these principles that we will study this semester, the first one being the multimedia principle. The multimedia principle states that humans learn better from words and pictures than from words alone. You will notice that my narration was correct with audio and a picture, and the text was correct with text and a picture, but not all three at the same time. This is the redundancy principle, which states that you should use visuals with words and audio or text, but not both. Remember limited capacity? The multimedia principle states that words and graphics used together promote learning. The premise is that people must actively engage in learning. This is best done by using words and graphics. Thinking back to this dual coding mechanism of our brain shows that learning is promoted. The power of this is that we can process words and graphics at the same time. By using both, you can create active connections that support each other. The way you do this is to select relevant images to support your message. If I'm explaining how a bicycle pump works, I can include an image that supports my explanation. Let's look at an example of the bicycle pump. So this is the picture of the bicycle pump, and I want to explain each one of the component parts. So I would add labels or arrows to the components. The handle is used to push in and draw out. The footrest stabilizes the pump action. The piston pushes and pulls against the cylinder. The cylinder separates the air chambers. The hose allows the flow of air into the tire. And the nozzle connects the hose to the tire. So you can see the image and arrows support the audio narration. Let's look at a different method. In this case, you could give on-screen instruction to label each part. Let's try it. The instructions say, click the name of the pump part. It will move to the indicated part. So we'll point to the handle and click. The piston. The cylinder. The footrest. The hose. And the nozzle. In this case, with on-screen narration with limited use of text. So to review, there is a lot of theory that explains something so simple as why we should use words and graphics together to promote learning. Theory states that we can process these at the same time because of the dual coding theory, and when used together they support each other to create new learning.